Hey everyone, it is Irene Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. And today's interview with my special guest, Carrie Bennett, is definitely connected, obviously, to this world of nervous system health and healing. It is an area that I am learning more about, and I will admit I'm getting a little addicted in a healthy way to this information of quantum biology. We also might say circadian biology. Now, Carrie and I have a very similar background in that we both were in the world of fitness and health and healing, more from a personal training and body work perspective. And then one thing led to another for her, and she stumbled into this work of quantum biology. Now, I, of course, stumbled into the world of somatic experiencing and healing trauma at the nervous system and somatic level, also kind of by accident, but it was the missing piece, the missing link in how I wanted to work with folks. And for Carrie and her work, quantum principles, quantum biology, circadian biology, it was definitely the missing link for her. And so now she is an expert, an educator in practice, working with people, helping them heal at this level. In our interview today, we touch on really one of the topics that she speaks of. It is just a tiny bit, but is a very important bit. We get into the importance of the sun, specifically sunlight, and why, as human beings, we need to see it and be in it at different times of the day so that we can have proper circadian rhythms. Now we get into the topic, or I should say the hormone melatonin, something that many of you may have heard of in regards to sleep. So we break that apart in a really, really cool way. We talk about the connection between cortisol, between gut health, between the ability for our systems to repair and rejuvenate, and a lot more. Her and I agreed that we would do a second conversation that will dive into mitochondrial health and something called exclusion zone water. Again, this is all around cellular health and hydration. At a later date, we wanted to keep this one around light, the different kinds of light, as well as artificial light and all those types of light that we are exposed to. Now, if you would like to learn more from Carrie, and I hope you do, she has a beautiful Instagram channel. We will post that, link that near this. And she has offered to give myself and my listeners a discount for her many webinars and courses. I will put that discount link again somewhere near this recording, and take advantage of that. She has low fee webinars, larger courses, where you can dive in deeper into this area. Just like my work, it is very hard to get the full scope in 1 hour or over an hour. And I really, really hope you go further and learn more from her. I will also add that the two other interviews that go well with this one, if you'd like to follow up, one is my interview with Sarah Kleiner and the other with Corey Gazvini. Those also will be posted near here. Enjoy our discussion. Hello, Miss Carrie. Welcome.
Hi, Irene. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yes. I have a girl crush on you and a few others in your space. So I'm thrilled to bring you here so that my people, my followers, can follow you and learn from you.
Cool.
And yeah, let's just start. Like, who are you and what do you do now? And then we'll get into the whole backstory.
Yeah, well, now I call myself a quantum clinician and educator. So I kind of do two branches. I still work with clients in helping them optimize their health, but I do it from what I call a quantum lens now. And then I also now teach this, right? Because I think that this is a very important topic that only enhances what other practitioners are doing. So through the Quantum Biology Collective, I teach a certification course. I also teach some private education online courses as well through my own website. And my goal is just to kind of get people to understand this stuff, because I think once you do, you'll apply it and you'll notice a change no matter where you're coming from, what aspect of modality, healing modality you're coming from.
Yes, and last summer was when I was introduced to this concept through Sarah Kleiner, who we mutually know. And she's a student, and I've interviewed her a few times with her around her journey. And I just was so amazed at how she just started to look amazing, glowing, healthy, all these things. And I know that her diet made a big difference. The nervous system work, she fully agrees has made a difference. And then this landed into her lap, and it's just skyrocketed her health, and she got pregnant and all these things, which is now common knowledge, which is so good, after not having success, right? So what happened is I started to apply some of these things in little bits, and I even kind of egged my husband on to do some of them too, because he was the guy that was looking at his phone late at night and first thing in the morning and struggling with a little bit of weight loss. And I'm like, hey, you might want to listen to this. And I kind of played in the background the Jack Cruz interview that Sarah did with him, and we'll post that below or near here so people can listen to that. But I know that you came across Cruz's work from what I recall from hearing some of your interviews. But I'll finish that thought and then I'll get you to talk about your history. But as both myself and my man started to apply some of these very simple things, noticeably there were differences in not grand scale health, but alertness, hunger, capacity to fall asleep at night. Of course, we do other things for our health, but it was one difference that made a huge difference. So tell everyone where you started in this journey of helping people. And we have a very similar story, so I can't wait to have you share it.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I started off as like just a science nerd right in high school. I wanted to take every science class possible. I just loved it, So that led me to college, and I chose a small liberal arts college where I could play sports. So I played sports. I was a college athlete, and they had a really good science program, right? Really good science program. And I remember graduating or being close to graduation and going into my volleyball coach's office and saying, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to go to, these PhD programs. It just didn't feel right, Like as much as I loved studying pre-med and studying microbiology and things like that, that wasn't the path that I just felt was right for me. And so I don't know what drew me to this, but I said, okay, Mom and Dad, I think I'm going to go to massage therapy school, and they were like, but they were so cool because they were like, okay, that's great. Like, follow what you feel you need to do. But by the way, get a job, put yourself through massage therapy school, and, we will, support you as best as we can emotionally, Yeah. And it was like, that's completely fair. So having been a college athlete, what I knew was training my body, right? So I became a personal trainer, Pilates instructor, all of those really cool things, balance training, kickboxing. I really got into that, the early 2000s fitness scene. And in this town that I live in called Kalamazoo, I opened up the first little personal training studio. And it was great. I was going through massage therapy school and I was, training people. And I thought at the time the end all be all was like exercise, right? I was always seeking what was the foundation of health? It was exercise, right? You got to lift like this. You got to sprint like this. You got to stretch like this. Your core work has to look like this. And massage therapy really changed that, shifted things a little. It was like, oh, there's this whole other side to the body. There's stress that's stored in tissue. There's trauma that's stored in tissue. There's energy flow that can be released and felt. And so, I lived a happy little life going back and forth between teaching and helping people with massage, helping people with personal training. And my clients were happy and they were content, but I still wasn't at that foundational level, right? My curious science brain was like, there's more, And so fast forward to when I had my first child 10 years ago, and his sleep was horrible. My sleep was horrible, which happened. Beyond newborn horrible. My digestion was a disaster. I got joint pain. I had just stretched out joints. Everything about me felt grimy. And for a long time, it was, oh, this is what new moms are supposed to feel like, right? This is what we're supposed to feel like. And then there came that point where I was like, wait, this can't be
This is not.
right, And so I, nerded it up and went back to get my master's in clinical nutrition. And it's like, okay, nutrition, it's the foundation. I'm going to do elimination diets and get rid of gluten. And, it was great. It was
Mhm.
great, right? It helped too. But I still wasn't
Yeah.
feeling amazing. And that's when I stumbled upon the work of Dr. Cruz. And if anyone's familiar with his work, if you open up one of his blogs, it takes 17 hours to read. And that's just to read all the words, not necessarily to understand
Understand it.
anything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I kind of got to this point where I was just like, well, I think that this guy kind of knows what he's talking about.
Mhm.
And I started to apply some of the things, the sunlight, the circadian rhythm. And I was like, okay, now my nerd brain needs to know absolutely everything there is to know about this field that we call quantum biology. And
Yeah.
so approximately 7 years ago, I dove into it and I have not left. I love everything about it, and I'm excited to share anything that people are willing to hear when it comes to taking care of their body at that quantum level.
I absolutely enjoyed listening to that story because I have a similar one. When you were saying in the early 2000s, you were doing all the balance work, the core work. That was me in the night like 1999 as well. So
Hmm.
we were doing similar things at that time. You were just a little younger than me. And it was similar. I was in exercise science, became a trainer, studied applied human nutrition, was in the gym, teaching, training. And something said to me, this is not enough to help these folks because there's a behavior element that isn't allowing them to follow through. And I kind of thought, I think I need a psychology degree to figure this out. I'm glad I didn't go down that route. I went down more mind body with the Feldenkrais work. But then it was in that training and in that practice that there was a handful of people, wasn't so much me, it was my clients who weren't getting better, even with this sophisticated mind body work. And then that's where our stories have this parallel in that I said to myself, there's something more. And then that led me to Peter Levine's work. Of course, you found Jack Chris, so thank you to these amazing guys that are the nerds and the geeks. And then I feel like we're making it accessible.
Right.
Does that make
Yes.
sense?
100%. That's exactly what it is. I love what you say about part of healing the nervous system is you have to educate. You have to have that
Yeah.
Educate yourself. I
Yeah.
feel the same way about just, someone who's healing their body. My goal is not to give you a protocol that you just do blindly. My goal is for you to actually understand and start to embrace some science that, yeah, the words might be a little confusing at first, but once you start to understand it, and once my clients start to recognize the physiological reasoning behind these recommendations,
Mhm.
that is the glue that really
Yes.
sticks with their behavioral changes.
Yes. And I think it has to do with our higher brain
Mm-hmm.
wanting information and wanting to figure things out. We are problem solvers as humans, whether we like it or not. And I did see in fitness and in the medical health world, just being given a pamphlet and saying you have to do this, it just doesn't create that glue with the person
No.
to stick and for them to keep perpetuating that lifestyle shift. So with that said, we can do one of two things. I would actually like to know, what was it that you started to notice, and what were the things that you started to implement before you really understood the hardcore science that Dr. Cruz was talking about? And you're right, I haven't even tried. I can read science stuff, and I'm like, I'm going to leave that for maybe later, his blog posts. But I love listening to him, right?
Yes.
Some people
Yeah.
find it hard, but I like the direct, like, he knows what he knows and he has conviction, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were the things that you started to do, and what did you start to notice?
You know, when I think back to that time, I described my physical body as like always being in a dark movie theater at a boring movie, right? Like at any time, I almost felt like, have you ever woken up and your eyes just feel tired? Like you can close
Sure,
them at any time and
sure.
just crash. That's kind of how I was moving through life. It's like, could I force myself to have energy and do things? Absolutely. But like I literally could just close my eyes and sleep. And
Can I ask
so,
you a question about that?
yeah.
So for context, when you had that feeling, were you, because you were in fitness and health, I'm going to assume you were taking care of yourself with exercise and you weren't eating crap.
Correct.
Yes, you were in good relationships.
Correct.
You were okay. Just wanted to for the record.
Yeah, no, I was doing everything I thought my body needed to feel amazing, and it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I think anyone who kind of tiptoes into this world of quantum biology, you hear the importance of seeing the sunrise. I'm like, what the heck is so special about the sunrise, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I have the first picture of me and my son. He was a summer baby, an August baby, hot in Michigan, right? And so, and like as a new mom, you're like, oh, we're not going to go outside ever. He can't handle the heat, you know? And so I literally remember it was probably 6 weeks after he was born that we finally went on our first walk. Like, I wasn't outside at all, right? Like this is so what I started doing was like, I was like, okay, we'll go outside. I'm up anyways. My kid wakes me up at 4 or whatever. We'll go outside at sunrise. And we started going outside at sunrise. And it's like almost like a good jolt. A bit of a, you know, like a, whoa, wait a second, you know, and I didn't notice it at first. You know, I didn't notice like the feeling behind my eyes, that sleepy feeling. I didn't notice it went away until I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't nap if I wanted to right now. And so it was an energy boost from sunrise. That was my first thing. And then I recognized, holy cow, like the other thing you hear is something about artificial light at night being bad, like light bulbs, right, are being bad. Well, you know, and so obviously I understand the quantum mechanism now, but I was like, well, you know, my kid's room is full of night lights. I've got his baby monitor like practically glued to his head. So let me just turn off the lights. Let me give him a dark sleep space. Let's make the house dim at night. You know, let's just do that. Okay. And then we started sleeping, you know, and it wasn't the best, most amazing sleep right off the bat, but it was at least a 30% improvement from what it had been. And it continued to improve and continue to improve to the point where it's just like, wow, okay, that was powerful, right? That was powerful enough for me to say, you know, even in spite of exercising perfectly and eating, you know, really well, that shifted the needle enough for me to say, okay, I really got to jump in with all this stuff.
So I have a question about that because I will be fully transparent. I do not get up with the sunrise yet. And so I know that when we brought Sarah on, some of my followers were they got stressed because they couldn't they couldn't get up at that time, or it was just another thing to do. And so, I'm wanting to know, let's just say someone has trouble sleeping. Is it useful for them at the beginning of this to actually force themselves out of bed when maybe they've finally fallen asleep at 5 a.m. when the birds are starting to chirp? I see you shaking your head saying no. Or is it better, and this is what I've just done, because I'm not sleeping till noon or anything like that, but the first thing I do is I walk outside. I wear contacts, so I don't put my contacts in anymore, and I just stand there, or I'll go for a walk or a bike ride or something like that. So what's your feeling on people who have such disrupted sleep? Tell me.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We build anxiety around sleep, especially if we're poor sleepers. And so, and typically poor sleeping means we either wake up a ton at night or we go to bed really late. We have a hard time falling asleep. So no, you know, a hardcore quantum health person be like, suck it up and wake up, right? Totally. First thing in the morning. My friend.
Boot camp.
Right, exactly. And so, but I would say no. I've worked with enough people who have that dysregulated circadian rhythm where literally I've tested their melatonin. Their melatonin is spiking at 9 o'clock in the morning. Whoa. And they can't wake. I mean, they can't physically. It would be almost, I don't know, it would be too jarring, right? It'd be too jarring for them to do that.
Abusive to try to do that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It would not feel nurturing. They wouldn't get the same benefit like I felt because I was up anyways, you know? Mm-hmm. So I tell people that with my night owls who are, you know, transitioning to more of a daytime circadian rhythm, they got to block the artificial light at night because you don't want to artificially keep yourself awake. See the sunset if you can. Spend evening time outside. Your eyes are picking up the time of day, no matter what time of day it is. So if you can kind of then set the stage on that end, and then you're doing it perfectly, Irene. You get out first thing that when you wake up, and your eyes again can pick up the time of day and tell your brain that the time, right? It then communicates it to all your cells, and you go on your merry little way.
Great, thank you. And if I think back to when I was younger in more of the mountain culture I lived in, there would be very, early mornings getting up because you would have to start hiking before sun to summit that peak. You couldn't start at noon, for example, or you'd be in the dark later in the day. And it always amazed me that if I got up at 4:30, it's the same with getting up for a flight. You think, oh my God, I can't do that. And then when you're up and you're driving to the airport and you're seeing the sun come up, you're awake. And so I know that intellectually, what my plan is, I'll share it with you, is because this week is like the longest day, the days of the year. But up here, we're a little higher than you.
Right.
My desire is as the summer moves forward, of 2022, I am going to attempt to wake up earlier when it's not at 4 a.m. Because right now it's like 4 a.m. The birds are chirping.
Right.
And then I'll see how that transfers into the fall, which will be a lot easier when it's 7 a.m., for example, 6:30, that kind of thing. So that's my plan. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's two key circadian times of the year, like early-ish spring, beginning of April, and then again, end of September-ish, where people who have a hard time potentially with getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning are able to then say, okay, I'm going to try the true sunrise time and see what I see, notice what I notice, and make adjustments.
So let's dig apart this sunrise thing a little bit. What is going on with, I know you mentioned melatonin, and I want to talk about that because that is one of those supplements that people think is going to help them sleep. And I just had someone say to me the other day, I've been having trouble sleeping. I took melatonin and it made me feel worse. So give us the Coles Notes, the Cliff Notes version, as we would say here in Canada. I don't know what you would say in the States.
Yeah, Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes? Here's Coles Notes. Coles Notes.
Okay.
What is that morning light doing? What is that morning light? And what is going on in our brain and nervous system when it actually goes into the eyes?
It's a beautiful pathway, right? It's really, really crazy to think about light as containing information that our body uses.
Yeah.
But we've all seen it, right? Anytime you've shown light through a prism and you see the different colors, that's different, what are called wavelengths of light. And so a wavelength of light is just information. The color contains information. So in that light are little packets of light called photons. And when we're outside, nature laid this out beautifully, right? Because it doesn't stay the same. The colors are not the same all the time from sunrise to sunset. They shift and they vary in a very predictable way. And so what you have at sunrise is you actually don't have very much of the blue. You don't have any ultraviolet. None of those colors of light. None of the UV light, right? And so at sunrise, it's really heavy in the red and infrared. Actually, that's a portion of light that we can't even see, right? But it's heavy in the red and the infrared. And that kind of is a calming, anyone who's been outside at dawn, right? It's very calming.
Yeah.
And so those soothing colors of light are what really preps the body then to wake up to the more energizing colors of light that come a little bit later. So then as soon as the sun breaks the horizon, you get a much more intense jolt of blue light.
Yeah.
But it's this perfect blend of red and blue that actually gets captured by the backs of my eyes. I got like little catcher's mitts for photons in the backs of my eyes. They're just waiting to suck this light in. And depending on the blend that gets caught, how much blue and how much red, it can communicate to this clock in my brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus and tell me my whole body knows then exactly what time of day it is. And so then as the colors shift and change, you get the blue, you get the violet, indigo, violet, ultraviolet colors. That's when the sun's at the high point of the sky, right? You got all all the colors, and then they predictably go away. The colors go away until at sunset, it really mirrors what you were receiving at dawn. And so we've, all living creatures have been entrained to this beautiful change of colors in the form of the wavelengths of light from sunrise to sunset. And then we've been able to optimize our biological function, decide when to do different tasks based on what light frequencies are there.
Got it. It's really interesting because it follows in some way the rainbow, but it's not completely because there's no green or yellow from what I know.
Well, it's the green and the yellow are there. The orange, green, it's all there. But other species use it. We don't use it a ton. Plants, bacteria and plants are going to use those more. The ones that humans really tune into are the red, the infrared, the blue, and the ultraviolet.
Got it. So here's the next question.
Sure.
So a lot of people are hearing blue light's bad, but that is from the artificial screens that are human-made, man-made, woman-made, that are artificial, basically.
Correct.
But that natural blue light from the sun in the morning, the sunlight, that is of the healthy kind, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. So this blue light from the sun tells time in our brain. It's really the color, the wavelength of light that keeps time because it predictably varies from like nothing at sunrise to increasing intensity till the sun reaches its high point and decreasing in its intensity until after sunset. And so that's why when we stare at a screen where the amount of blue is never changing, it's confusing. It's confusing to our circadian rhythm. And then imagine at night when we're staring at a screen with this artificial blue light, when at night there should be zero blue light in our environment. Again, it's confusing to this circadian rhythm.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question about infrared.
Sure.
And let's just do it, and then we're going to go back to blue light and the effects on health, the artificial blue light. So I know a lot of people have talked about infrared saunas. Is that the same thing? I'm being very, very I don't know anything. Tell me, Carrie, what is an infrared sauna, and is it the same kind of light that's coming from the sun?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So there's different wavelengths of infrared. There's infrared, near infrared, middle infrared, far infrared. You'll sometimes hear that associated with saunas. It's like far infrared sauna, or these red light panels that are becoming really popular, near infrared panels. The sun contains all of them. Okay. And some forms of infrared we feel as heat. Some forms of infrared we don't feel as heat. So the infrared, that being said, though, in general, infrared isn't ever doing anything for our circadian rhythm, and it's always beneficial as long as it's during a time when infrared would be available in our environment. So dawn till dusk. You want to hop in that sauna, go for it, right? I don't really worry about you timing that in a circadian way. Red light therapy panel, same thing. But that being said, then the other wavelengths of light, like let's say the blue light or even ultraviolet, where people are like, well, I want to hop in a tanning bed. It's like, well, that's intense UV light might disrupt your circadian rhythm, if you use it in the middle of winter, on the winter solstice in Vancouver, right? When there's pretty much very little of that available to you.
None of it. Well, that's interesting because back in the day, I would use the tanning things when I was in my 20s, and I don't even remember anymore if that helped or not. It felt good to be in the warmth. I was living in a ski town at the time. But this year, I experimented going into one just to see what would happen, and it threw me off. And it's probably because I'm more sensitized and more regulated, so I'm noticing these things. But my hair, it did something to it. And if people go back to my old videos around, I think it was like February, my hair it almost bleached it. It was, wow. And I have dark hair, and I'm like, is this something I'm eating? No. Is this something odd? I'm like, I think that was from going into the tanning booth, just to see what it would feel like, again, after not having done that for so long. So would you say that, because I'm sure there are some folks listening to this who might be using those tanning booths and beds, would you say those are a no-no, or is there a way to use those that is healthy?
Yes, there is, right? There's no broad sweeping recommendations, right? Because The problem with all of these things is like we're trying to take what's given to us from nature, and even UV light in nature also contains all the other colors. And
Right.
when we isolate it, we isolate just one small range of those colors and shine it on our skin. Could we make vitamin D? We could, yeah. Does
Right.
vitamin D, do we know vitamin D is connected to so many things? Absolutely. But I always say that it's best to get it the way nature made it, as opposed to trying to artificially say we can outsmart nature, out hack what nature gave
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm glad I asked that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So it sounds like if one is going to use an infrared device, a sauna, a red light, which is getting very popular, I have a few, and they do help my injuries. And I have heard don't use that at night. Always use it when there's light outside, and preferably open up a door so there's rays coming in from outside, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel like it's always good to use them with open doors, open windows if possible. It's less imperative with that red light because I just feel like it's considered a weaker wavelength of light.
Okay.
So the effects aren't necessarily as intense as if you were to shine this spurty lamp on you, like a spurty vitamin D lamp
Yeah.
on you without the rest of the wavelengths of light. So there are some people who are sensitive to the brightness of those, which will impact their melatonin production at night. So if you try to use it right before bed and you're wired, you know that that's not a good time for you. But I do have some clients who find it so soothing before bed, puts them right to
warming.
sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
yeah, I agree. Okay. Let's talk melatonin, my dear.
Yes.
Give a little crash course on what that is, why it's best to probably not take the supplements, and how we want that melatonin to be released naturally during the day.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yes, melatonin is a hormone, and we actually make it in two places, and most people don't recognize that. We make it in our pineal gland, so that it deep in our brain, we make
Here.
it,
Yep.
right? Exactly. And then we also make it inside of our cells. It's called subcellular melatonin. And so we think of melatonin as just like a hormone that puts us to sleep. But it's actually responsible for so much repair. It's very much one of our most potent anti-aging repair hormones. And so if you think about it, and if we were to test someone's melatonin, we see the pineal melatonin, we see it start to rise around sunset and then peak right in the middle of the night. And then as the sun would start to be a rising above the horizon, like dawn, it starts to go down again, right? So we have this circadian peak when we're sleeping. And that makes sense because, yes, it puts us to sleep. That pineal melatonin puts us to sleep. But then it's responsible for running all of our cellular repair programs when we are asleep. Something called autophagy, which is like our internal repair recycling programming. Apoptosis kills off cells that don't function, don't serve us anymore. And so we need enough melatonin to not only put us to sleep, but to run those programs. Here's why you don't necessarily want to take it. And melatonin's a hormone. I have a hard time recommending blanketly that it's always safe to supplement a hormone because hormones work in feedback loops. They work in these beautiful systems, tightly coupled systems. And so the coupled system with melatonin is actually the fact that when you are outside in morning sunlight, those wavelengths that you capture in the morning through your eyes turn a chemical called tryptophan, which we think of at Thanksgiving, right? Oh, I've eaten too much tryptophan. I'm tired. Turkey. Yeah, right? That actually, so we've got tons of tryptophan in the morning, just kind of swimming in the backs of our eyes. That tryptophan, as soon as it receives the light frequency, the ultraviolet light frequency, it takes that tryptophan and it makes it into serotonin. So it actually sets us up to feel good, energized, focused. It sets up our brain to kind of be productive for the day. And then that serotonin, as soon as we sense the light is waning and darkness is coming, that serotonin then gets converted into melatonin. That melatonin gets used up, broken back down, and the tryptophan gets recycled back in the morning. And it's this beautiful cycle. Tryptophan gets the light, becomes serotonin, feeling good, doing my thing.
Yep.
Day wanes, melatonin. And that's how it's meant to be. When you insert it just artificially here, your it's really confusing to your body because it's like, well, wait, we didn't have the stores to lead up to it. How did that happen?
Happen.
And so you're more likely to have tons of tryptophan in the morning that makes you just feel groggy as heck, gives you a hard time waking up, right? You have a hard time getting out of bed. You start to feel worse, especially then if you're not converting that tryptophan back to serotonin with morning sunlight and linking the whole process together.
I wonder if this is why. Thank you for that cyclical explanation. That makes for me that makes sense. And I think the individual I was talking to who said they got thrown off by taking melatonin, I think they might have said that it threw their gut off. And now that's making sense to me because serotonin is created in the gut to help us feel good. Could you speak to that connection with the gut?
Sure, absolutely. So when we get that signaling to the brain to make serotonin, that clock in the brain also then signals to the gut to make serotonin, right? Every cell in our body has clocks, and they're timed. They're all timed together. And even the bacteria that live in our gut get that signal, and bacteria release light. I don't think people realize, but bacteria release ultraviolet light, and that also helps us to make that serotonin in our gut. And that serotonin in the morning then helps us to have a bowel movement. And so that and bowel movement, serotonin, drives bowel motility. And so it's like it helps to be the reason why when you wake up in the morning and you go outside and you move a little bit, you got to poop, right?
It works.
It works.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so it's all connected, and it really has to do with the light that's entering the eyes that kind of syncs up all of the other processes to that same signal.
Fascinating. Okay, now you got me curious about bacteria creating light.
Yeah.
Because you've said it, now I have to ask, how is
Sure.
that happening? What is that doing? Obviously, I think most people now know that we need the good bacteria in our biome. It's all over us, skin and cells. So what's going on there, Carrie?
Well, every cell actually releases ultraviolet light. We can't see it. It's called biophotons. Maybe you've seen images that there's special cameras that can
Yeah.
kind of capture that. But bacteria just so happen to release thousands of times more UV light. It's their main species communication mechanism, the light that they release. And so we're now looking from through a quantum lens, we're looking at the gut bacteria as, yes, everyone's trying to look at, well, you want it to be diverse. You have to have enough. You have to have this particular blend. But no one's really honing in on the slightly different frequencies of light that these bacteria are releasing. And so through a quantum lens, you recognize that the different frequencies of light are information. And that's how the bacteria communicate to each other to be as healthy as possible for us and for them, right? That symbiotic relationship. And then all of our gut cell surfaces have receptors for the light too. You have to ask yourself, why do we have receptors for light in our gut if it's not going to get there, right? And it just so happens that it's the light that the bacteria release. So these are like little, our cells have like these little receivers. The gut bacteria are projecting light information onto it, and it's changing the way our gut functions. It's telling us when to repair, right? So the bacteria shift based on our circadian rhythm. So our gut knows, oh, no, now is not the time to repair. This is the middle of the day. We're digesting food. We're ready for food. And then when the sun is gone and it's nighttime, our bacteria are also, they know that as well. And they're communicating that to our gut cells as well. Okay, now you can turn over. Now you can repair. It's a beautiful thing.
So I like that. Thank you. And I'm going to hypothesize something here. So tell me if I'm on the right track. Let's just say someone has a really awful gut, meaning it's not well, IBS, Crohn's, irritable, all these things, which could be diet related.
Sure.
But I also know that people fix up their diet and their guts still don't get better.
Correct.
I also know that some of my students will work with trauma work, which is what I teach, and that might improve their gut. And then there's some folks who try it all and they're still having trouble with their gut. So let me know, how will the bacteria know that person A who's having these troubles isn't going outside and getting that natural sunlight? Is there like a connection? Are the little bacteria in there going, come come on, we need to go outside. Like, is that how they get, is that how they become healthy to release? Because I'm assuming the light that they release is energy, obviously.
Right.
Is there a known way that that either happens or doesn't happen?
It's twofold, right? The health
Okay.
of the gut is tied to the circadian rhythm for two
Yeah.
reasons. Number one, when you are just paying attention to the eye, that getting a good, we call it a strong circadian rhythm, right? So your brain knows exactly what time of day it is without confusion because you're outside more. You're getting that full information of light entering your body, entering your
Yeah.
eyes. When you do that, the gut cells have a clock that then allows them to repair faster. I guess very similar. I mean, in terms of like trauma and stuff, when someone's unaware, when the gut cells are unaware of what time of day it is, they kind of go to they freeze. They don't operate as well because they're unsure. It's like, I don't quite know what time of day it is. I don't quite know what to do. So I'm just going to kind of lay low.
Yeah.
Which is why we hear, oh, go on this elimination diet. It'll take you 3 weeks to heal your leaky gut. And then, you can reintroduce food and you'll know. But really, our gut cells are designed to turn over and heal every 48 hours when we have a strong circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And so when that signal from the brain is continually reaching the gut knows, oh, it's nighttime, I can repair. Oh, yeah, it's nighttime again, I can repair. And then the bacteria only reinforce that. They're the same way. It's like, okay, we can give light energy and light information when it's needed for the gut cells to be functional, and we can kind of pull it away when it's not time for the gut cells to be functional. It's time for them to go into repair mode.
Right.
And it's all tied to the light we get into our eyes. It's really cool.
It's cool and just simple, really.
Simple. Very simple.
In a strange kind of way. It's very
Yeah,
simple.
totally.
And I'm gonna bet, and so I'm gonna quiz you now on another hormone. My sense is if someone, to put this back to my audience who are interested in fight, flight, freeze, that
Sure.
whole dysregulation of the nervous system and restoring health back to the nervous system, my hunch is that if someone is stuck in a survival stress response, whether acute or chronic, or they don't even know it, because a lot of people are in functional freeze, that is going to basically co-opt that system into survival, and it ain't going to shine that light.
100%. Yep. You're exactly right. And then you get so many other changes. I know we don't even have to go into it, but like the mitochondria too. I mean,
Yeah.
all the important parts of our cells are responding to the light signals. And when they don't know, literally the cells go into a danger mode.
Yeah.
And they're just not functioning at their best.
No, yes. We may not go into mitochondria today. We might need to reserve that for the next talk, but we'll
I'll
see.
pull back.
We'll see. Okay, I'm taking notes, and this is, I think, where I have fallen in love with this, because I did like biochemistry
I did too.
I loved it in university. I loved organic chemistry.
Yes.
I loved drawing all the things and,
Molecular biology pathways.
I loved it. And I think this is why I've geeked out so much on this, is it just makes so much sense in relationship to the human and the ecosystem we're in. I want to touch on, I had said blue light. I want to talk about that. And the reason why is, again, I know for many of our students, they're stuck inside.
Yes.
And Zoom, the computer, it actually is a resource for them, because it might be where they watch the funny show that actually does help their cortisol go down. But then we have this weird paradox where then we're getting this blue light coming into the system in the middle of the night, can't sleep. Let's pull up the phone and scroll, and it will actually soothe a person, right? I know that because I remember the first time I had anxiety on a plane, which never used to happen. I had to calm myself by just kind of going into that mode of resourcing with my phone. So I just threw a few things at you, but what would be your mini lecture on this idea of blue light, folks who are really trapped inside and maybe are struggling to get outside? What are some, first of all, we could speak science, what is actually going on? I think the education piece, how is that blue light impacting us other than the fact that it might be keeping us awake? So what's going on with that artificial blue light?
Right. And so, okay, so we already set the stage for this by saying that blue light is at its strongest when the sun is in the middle of the sky, in the middle of the afternoon.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the screens that we're staring at these days, that's the exact same intensity of blue light. It's as if it's the middle of the afternoon when that intensity of blue light is reaching our eyes. And so that's where the brain, you get this confusing response because we probably perceive based on the amount of hours that we've been awake and maybe the fact that it looks like the sun's going down, we're probably starting to perceive that it's getting closer and closer to bedtime. But then all of a sudden you stare at that screen or, people get uncomfortable with the dark. Maybe you live alone and you want to flip on a bunch of lights in your house and those light bulbs do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that blue light all of a sudden gives your brain a confusing message. It's like, wait, I thought the day should be getting close to over. She's been up for 16 hours. Holy cow, what's going on? And then you get that shock that says, oh, wait, no, it's the middle of the afternoon. So your melatonin gets suppressed. You really start to tank your melatonin and your cortisol drives up. Yep. And so right there, that is a stress response and a circadian dysregulation. The other thing that you're getting is, if we remember, that it's that beautiful blend of blue light in the morning that starts to wake up hormone centers of the brain. So as you went through your day, your hormone production kind of did its circadian rhythm, its circadian peak morning-ish, and it regulates itself. And all of a sudden you're getting ready to go towards bedtime. And then you get another burst of hormone production. Yeah. That would be estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. That's where we're seeing hormone imbalances and hormone sensitive cancers and things like that are now being linked to artificial light at night. And so it's all tied to that light signaling that's really confusing a bunch of systems in our bodies. So, the end game isn't living in a cave, right? Yeah. That's not realistic for anyone.
No.
But what I'm starting to do is recognize that, okay, my family, we're sports fans, right? We like to watch. So how can we watch the sporting event du jour
at night?
And at night, right? And do it without messing circadian rhythm up.
Yeah.
And so that's where I have different colored blue blockers. There's different filters that you can put over the screens. Like I've had to do that because my kids hate the blue blockers. My husband does too.
Yeah, I don't like them either, to be honest. So
I know. But like it's like, okay, you don't necessarily have to give it up because there is something, I don't know, distracting, right? About just kind of shutting the brain off for the day. But you have to also pair that with, I can maybe distract myself and maybe enjoy something that I like without doing all of this other hormone disruption. And that actually makes things worse. It's a vicious cycle, right? Because when your body can't position itself in time of day or in space, that's anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, that really drives up some anxiety.
Yeah.
And so when you can actually sync the circadian rhythm, when you can sync what time of day it is and still watch something maybe with a red tone to it, maybe you have your, a blue shade on it, all these things, that will allow you to still enjoy maybe scrolling social media, but also preserve your circadian signaling. Give your body the time of day to say, oh, maybe I don't want to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning. The day is over. I'm ready to start raising my melatonin so that I can go to bed.
So I guess, the moment that sun goes down, the melatonin starts to produce. That's just what happens. And with day and age, life, and families maybe not coming home until 6 p.m. in the winter, you got to make dinner, all these things are happening. Let's just say someone has to have the lights on when the sun goes down. Is there a time frame, like once things go dark at night, let's just say it's 9 p.m., but the sun went down at 6 because it's the dead of the winter in Vancouver.
Sure.
I remember listening to, I think it was Chris from EMR Tech, saying in a talk with Sarah that it takes about an hour for it to reset. I can't remember the specifics of that.
The melatonin.
Yeah.
I mean, melatonin will peak 4 hours after you perceive darkness.
Okay.
So it'll release, it'll start to recover.
Little bits.
if you're looking for like in terms of a practical household thing,
Yeah.
my kids get home from practice, we got to eat dinner, I got to make dinner, they have to do
Homework.
homework, right? The light bulbs that I find to be the most
Yeah.
normal, right?
Yeah.
Like you can use red bulbs, right? I'm not a huge fan of red bulbs. But so the most normal, besides my neighbors thinking I'm a huge weirdo, the light bulbs that I think are the easiest to transition to that are circadian appropriate are the old school decorative Edison style incandescent bulbs,
Yep.
right?
They look cool too.
They look cool too. They're soothing. They're not
Yeah.
super bright, but it's
Yeah.
enough light where if you have that in a lamp, next to your kid's desk or above your dining room table, it's enough to have family dinner, to get everything done that you need to get done. But because incandescent bulbs come from a thermal source, it's a heat sourced light. It's a lot like candlelight. It contains the full spectrum of color, but it just so happens that incandescent mimics what it's like at sunset. And so it's not going to have a ton of blue light by any means. It's going to be really heavy in the red and the infrared, which is what you would have had at sunset. So you get more of a perpetual sunset, which is better than like telling your brain it's noon.
Yeah.
It's noon. And then because you don't have the blue light in that, it's more of a sunset feeling. As soon as you start to dim the house and turn those down, you can recover your melatonin that much faster.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've never liked those really blue looking lights that have become fashionable that I guess are just more energy efficient.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
stand
I don't
them.
either.
Ugh.
They're jarring. They're really, I kind of like cringe when
They even I can
whenever.
feel the hum off of them sometimes too.
Yeah.
And then candles. That's something that
Candles are beautiful.
I mean, it is a bit of an investment, especially ones that aren't toxic. The paraffin, right?
Yes.
The beeswax
Right.
candles. You don't need a lot of candlelight to light your home at night,
It's beautiful.
right?
It's so soothing.
It's
So
romantic
soothing.
too, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
Okay, so we've covered blue light and what you said about that connection with certain cancers, hormonal disruption. What could you say around that is a little nugget of information? Because I do know of some folks in my life who have succumbed to some pretty intense hormonal cancers, and I know that they were in a lot of artificial light, looking at their phones a lot, working from screens. What's the connection there with those hormones in the evening and that blue light?
So when
And,
we
and the sex hormones, I will say, like the progesterone, like those
yeah.
things is what I mean.
No, it's perfect, right? So
Yeah.
what you have, I think everyone has heard of cortisol before,
Yes.
right? We know it's our stress hormone, and I think everyone realizes we do get like a surge of cortisol in the morning, like it's meant to wake us up and
Yeah.
energize us. So we have to have elevated cortisol in the morning. But before it's cortisol, it's actually the master steroid hormone called pregnenolone.
Yes.
And so, let's say 9 o'clock in the morning, right? The brain, the mitochondria, which we'll talk about later at some other point, make pregnenolone for us in all of our cells. But there's especially the ones that are in our sex cells. And that pregnenolone can become a lot of different things. So at that point in time, my body, my brain takes a snapshot and says, okay, is Carrie in a safe space to make a baby? Does she have enough body fat stored on her, right? Is this a time of year when food will be plentiful to feed a growing baby? All of those things. And so I can funnel that pregnenolone to progesterone, to estrogen, to all the things that my body would need in order to prep to create a baby and grow a pregnancy.
Yep.
Or I can be in a state of, Carrie is in stress, right? She's being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. She's got a deadline at work, but yeah. And so they'll funnel a lot more of that pregnenolone into cortisol. And so every morning, my body is making this decision for me in the morning, right? And then when ultraviolet light, the more intense frequencies of ultraviolet light appear, when the sun gets higher and higher, that actually is the off switch. That's why cortisol starts to slow down. It starts to decline, right? It's like, and that's where the other steroid hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, also start to just kind of create this balance, right? They get regular. They start, okay, Carrie has too much estrogen in here. We're going to boot it out this way. Testosterone is low. We got to raise it up a little bit. And so that's where the body starts to regulate those hormones. So picture what happens at night.
Yeah.
Right? When the day is waning and all of a sudden we get that jolt of blue and we're producing cortisol again. We're producing all of these steroid hormones again. And there's never any ultraviolet light to counter that.
Right.
Which means that all of a sudden we're having the challenge of I'm making the hormones, but I don't have the off switch to kind of regulate it. And so what that means is to regulate hormones, it's about just modifying your light environment. It's about getting outside key times during the day. Okay, let me get a little morning light. Let me get a little ultraviolet light. When the sun is going down, let me make sure I tell my body the sun is going down and I keep my house chill and dim and calm. You know, let me do what I need to do to mitigate the blue light from entering my eyes if I'm watching screens so that you don't get that hormone surge at night. And you kind of get that nice sleep. Your melatonin is giving you some repair. And then when you wake up and you go outside, you get the natural blue to start the process over in a healthy way again.
Beautiful. So in essence, a lot of these hormone-related cancers, if we just, and I am not an oncology specialist, but I know that we're seeing these connections with this artificial world and light, with these troubles, is that there's no signaling to turn off,
right?
To reintegrate and digest into the system. It's just a party of too much of one thing, and then
it's perpetual morning. It's perpetual, it's perpetual, perpetual morning, perpetual daytime. We don't have the signals to shut it off. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
you've been a great teacher. I've loved. It's so good. So the two things that we didn't touch on that we will now touch on at a later time will be the mitochondria. I want to talk a little bit more about electrons when we do.
Oh, yeah.
And this concept of easy water, the exclusion zone.
My favorite.
So that's like the cliffhanger, like the teaser, everyone, because this is important. I think if people can hear this and start to shift some of these habits, and like I said, I am not getting up at 4 a.m., guys, I'm just getting out as much as I can into the light, onto the grass, into the dirt, little bits. I'm not outside 10 hours a day, but little bits as much as I can.
Yes.
Tell people about all the things that you offer so they can keep learning. And I know that you're going to offer us a coupon code for your many webinars that you have that are ready.
Yes, ready to go.
So what are they?
So I think there's a couple I think that would really interest your listeners. I did a webinar on quantum strategies for anxiety and depression, really looking at this light, and what's being done. What can we do in our daily lives to correct our light environment to help improve that? And there's other things too. I talk about earthing. I talk about breathing. There's other strategies with that. But that's a lovely little webinar to get people introduced into kind of more, okay, how can I view my body through a quantum lens? Yeah. And then I also have a more extensive course that's called Connect to the Light. It's everything you need to know about the light, how to see the sunrise. When do I go outside? Is it okay if I see it through trees? Do I have to see it coming up over the horizon? What about blocking blue light? How do I turn my screen red? It literally lists all of those things. And that slightly more extensive course also includes the webinar that I did on anxiety and depression as kind of so if you want kind of both for a package, that's another one to look at. But all the courses will really kind of get people into this quantum world. And just don't be discouraged by the language, because all of us had to learn this at some point. It's just through the repetition, right, that we start to say, oh yeah, electrons, mitochondria, easy water. It just rolls off the tongue. But trust me, it didn't at first.
No, I mean, we have to start somewhere, right?
We have to start somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. So that would be a great way to connect to these courses, connect with me through these courses, learn this information, start to apply it. And yeah, I think we have a coupon code that we'll probably link below or somewhere here, and that would be great to apply to all of this.
If you're listening or watching just somewhere near this, there'll be extra text. And you also had one for kids. I wanted to mention that because I know there's a lot of parents that listen, and I know a lot of kiddos are struggling these days, and I have a feeling it's because they're on their screens all the time, and the little ones are never outside. Not all of them, but not the way we were. At least I know I was outside a lot as a kid.
All the time. Yeah.
So
that one's a good one.
Yeah.
So it's called quantum parenting, and it's about exactly that. It's about how our kids now are just living in an artificial world. Screens, non-native EMFs that we haven't talked about, like Wi-Fi. All of these things will challenge their hormones, challenge their nervous system, challenge their sleep, their melatonin. And so we're just, if we can look at it as from a parental lens, this is the age where we really need to help teach them to have a strong circadian rhythm. And kids bounce back fast.
Yes.
That's the coolest thing to see, right? It's like, okay, let's apply this for a week or two and you'll start to notice differences, and they'll ask for it. And so it's all about the little strategies you can do as a busy parent to help your kid, support your kid in their light environment, in their, their mitochondrial health, all these things that we can talk about at a future date. So it's another cool webinar that I've taught, and now the recording is available.
And you know that from personal experience because you have a little family of your own. Three of them.
Three little ones, and I'm learning as I go, but I like to share. I like to share what I learn.
So good. And so when this is live and out, for those listening and watching, we will have already released a video interview with Corey Gazvini, who's one of your colleagues. And in that, Corey and I do a pretty big deep dive into the non-native EMFs, the work of Marino and Obecker. And so for those who are like, what is this EMF thing? Watch that one, listen to that one, and I'll post that near here, and that'll complement this really well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Anything else you'd like to add, Carrie, to people here?
I always like to remind people that consistently good is better than occasionally perfect, right? And so that's really where these quantum strategies, just give it your best go. Don't obsess over doing it perfectly. Just give it a try, and just try consistently.
Great place to end, my dear. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Irene.